wanted to welcome everyone here to the live stream. I'm really excited to start doing this again because of having to do this before. I did this back in 2020 during the pandemic where we had nothing to do. And so I went on a couple of live streams. I think I did about, I don't know, 12, 13 of them. And it was pretty fun to do as we talked about some of the technology. So welcome again. Now reinstating this live stream, which I call show version, and really just talking about the technology, Wi-Fi, and anything that we're working on, because a lot of us work from home, and I'm not really, able to connect with my peers in person, or we're always in some sort of meeting, and just wanted to do something beyond meetings, right? And so here I'm reinstating the show version live stream where after doing 13 back in 2020, I think I skipped 2 years. I did another one in 2023 in February talking about Wi-Fi 6E labs. And so here we are in 2024 starting it again, maybe one per year. It would be a good goal. But I want to thank you for joining me here, Anders. Thank you very, very, very much. And so today's topics, we're going to talk about some Wi-Fi, specifically around Ekahau and what they're doing, some industry news, which includes some Wi-Fi and how Wi-Fi is being used, interesting enough, and then other technologies aside from Wi-Fi, what I've been working on, and also what I've learned in, I don't know, the past week. And so one of the things that is coming up pretty soon is we've got Wi-Fi Day, right? Ekahau Wi-Fi Day. And Ekahau Wi-Fi Day is going to be a virtual event on September 19th here this year, 2024. And it's too bad that it's a virtual event. I attended the one back in London, UK, which was in March, and I really had an excellent time at that event, meeting up with other Wi-Fi professionals who are in the European area. So I took that long flight over to London, made a vacation out of it, and really got to see how people were there, what the presentations were like from the presenters for Wi-Fi Day in London. And I was hoping that that same event would be done live in person here in the US, because it would be really cool to attend. And this time around, they've got some good presenters, and I don't know if it's going to be a live event or if they'll have pre-recorded videos, because you've got some great speakers lined up. You've got the CEO of Ookla, and then Matt doing his excellent presentation skills with Stu, and then there's some conversations around Wi-Fi 6E still, and how we're going to use that along with standard power, doing Wi-Fi with super large events, and also security. So there's a lot of good topics, and it's just for one day. So I encourage you to check it out. Go to ekahau.com, look up Wi-Fi Day 2024, because the really cool thing that they will do at Wi-Fi Day, which I don't think they did this in the London event, is that they're doing a giveaway. And in this giveaway, I think one lucky person is going to get the whole toolkit, the whole shebang, right? It's going to be the Ekahau AI Pro license. You're going to get the Sidekick 2. You're going to get a subscription to Ekahau Connect, and also be able to select what type of ECSE training you would like. So I think that's a good deal, especially for a virtual event, being able to have that kind of giveaway and the toolkit you need to start really designing and troubleshooting Wi-Fi, doing some validations. And I'm actually going through the ECSE training, the new one that they've published, just to kind of review what they've got going on. That ECSE training is revolving around the Ekahau Measure license, where it's just someone who can go and do the validation surveys. And then there's also the security part, which is done by JJ. And I'm looking forward to that one, to get more refreshed on my security side of things. And so that's Ekahau Wi-Fi Day. And if we keep going along with Ekahau, they released a new update on the Ekahau Sidekick 2, right? And I've seen some conversations online, either on Twitter or even in the Clear Descent Slack channel, about how the Sidekick 2 does spectrum analysis and how it does packet captures. And so I thought it'd be interesting to bust out my Sidekick 2. And, I don't do a lot of validation surveys as much. I used to travel quite a bit just to do validation surveys, but in my company, I now have someone to help with that, so we can split that work. And so I connected my Sidekick 2 to my laptop. And if you don't know what the Sidekick 2, this is what it looks like. All right, so if I can just pop that out, we'll get rid of that. But this is the Ekahau Sidekick 2. It's capable of doing 6 gigahertz spectrum analysis, a lot more. And maybe if I shared my screen just to show you guys what's involved, right? And so here, this is Ekahau. I'm actually running it on the live tab of AI Pro. You can see on the right side, I have the Sidekick 2 connected, and it's actually on an older firmware, 1.2.8. I will update it. I just wanted to see what the difference was with the Sidekick. So I'm running, spectrum analysis. I've got my phone here, which should be connected to a test SSID, and it is on 2.4. So if I was to run a speed test to try to generate some spectrum, not that there isn't anything running on 2.4 right now, but we can see maybe what the differences would be with the Sidekick 2 on the other firmware. So there you can see some traffic there on channel 11. Now I don't remember which channel my test access point is on. It's actually a U7 Pro from Ubiquiti. And so there's I just ran a speed test, right? Speed test to try to generate some traffic. And it's interesting to see some spikes here and there. But now I think it should just be updated. And so I'll go through the update as we talk here. Maybe it could get better at visualizing some of the spectrum. So if you wanted to see what that update is, I'm on 1.2.8. The current firmware that's available is 1.4.8. These are the list of changes, the release notes for the Sidekick. And I will talk about release notes coming up. And what I'm really interested in is this packet capture enhancement for Wi-Fi 6E, although I don't know if I'll be able to do packet capture on this computer. I know it was possible with the Sidekick 2 on the Ekahau Analyzer app. I believe that's what it's called. Faster startup time. Okay, and then the spectrum quality enhancements. And that's what I really wanted to see what the difference was in the Ekahau Sidekick 2 on this new version. And so I'll just go ahead and update, and we'll just kind of touch back on how that goes as we continue this live stream. And I can hear the fan spinning up right now. So that update was fairly quick. There's a sound. It has disconnected from my laptop, and so it makes this beeping sound, letting you know that it disconnected from your Ekahau application, right? So that's going. And now's a good time to take a sip of coffee. I don't know where you are, Anders. Are you in Norway? So maybe it's not a cup of coffee for you. The one cool thing that happened was it this week. I tried to follow up with the news this week. Was the new iPhone 16 that came out, right? So Wi-Fi 7 is now here. We have Google Pixel supporting Wi-Fi 7. We've got Samsung phones supporting Wi-Fi 7. And now Apple has decided to update their iPhone with Wi-Fi 7. And if you were watching this announcement, you probably saw this screen where, hey, there's a little Wi-Fi 7 indicator there. And usually Apple is pretty conservative when it comes to the protocols that they're going to support. Although I did think they were just as forward-thinking with the cellular part of things. But with Wi-Fi 6E, I think they held off for a bit, for a year, and then put it into their last phone. So far, I think it's just been an okay implementation on the iPhone and all their other Apple devices. But it's good to see iPhone 16 having Wi-Fi 7 support, just because it really helps push the protocol usage forward. And hopefully we will have really good compatibility between these devices and the Wi-Fi network, because if they've learned what has happened with 6E and the implementation of OWE, WPA3, I'm not too concerned about with what happened or how that works. I don't think I've seen any issues, but with OWE, I've seen a couple issues with some devices. And those issues were mostly around having to connect to the SSID and then drop off of that Wi-Fi for whatever reason. It would have a problem. And so I've actually been troubleshooting something like that this week. And so that's pretty cool that they'll have a new phone with Wi-Fi 7. So the question is, should we get this new phone, right? It comes out this year. Should I go and get one to test and have now 2 Wi-Fi 7 devices? Because right now I'm using just the Google Pixel for testing. I'd be curious what Wi-Fi 7 features it supports. And what that's telling me is even though Wi-Fi 7 hasn't been ratified, it's telling me that Apple does not see a large amount of changes happening, at least for now. But it's good to test out. So I'll go back a little bit and look at my Sidekick 2 and the successfully updated to version 1.4.8. And so what I want to know is, do we see anything different when I run a speed test or something else, right? And I'm looking, my phone just went and changed SSIDs on me, so I need to reconnect. So now I'm back on that test SSID. I'm going to pause this, rerun my speed test, see if we can generate traffic. I was curious why I wasn't seeing too much. So channel 3 or channel 11? Channel 3 got really dense there. But surprisingly, I'm getting much slower speeds on this Unify AP. But I don't know, it looks the same to me. I don't know, what do you guys think? If you wanted to take a look at the other spectrum, maybe I'm on 5. Oh yeah, there, I'm on 5 gigahertz. That's why. Earlier it was on 2.4. So the U7 Pro is on a 40 megahertz wide channel. Maybe if I move this window a bit, there you go. There's the Sidekick 2 is literally next to the AP, so that's why it looks so strong of a signal. But I don't know, it looks the same to me. If you want to see what 6 gigahertz looks like, there you go. There's something on all those channels that's got to be, that can't be right. I don't know if it's just picking up something from, or that's something with the U7. It's almost, looking at the waterfall, it almost looks like something is just going through each of the channels. And so that's weird. Yeah, I don't know. I have to look into that. I should have looked at the 6 gigahertz before updating the Sidekick 2, but it'd be interesting to see why that is. And even my puppy is is curious. Let me see if she can tell us. So another reason why I haven't been as active in the any live streaming or videos is due to the puppy. This is Bingo. She's 6 months old, and she's been keeping me busy and away from any Wi-Fi technology. But Anders, yeah, PSC scan. You know, I was thinking about that, but would it be transmitting? Would the Sidekick be transmitting while it's doing a PSC scan? I don't think so. I don't think the Sidekick can transmit. And so that's why it's interesting to me. So if we go back to it, you see how channel 5 is actually being utilized here. And I believe my Unify is on channel 5. But these other ones are kind of active. And the last I checked, there weren't any 6 gigahertz networks in my area. And so that's something I'll be looking at. It's just kind of interesting. And so if I go back to Wi-Fi 7 for a bit, because Wi-Fi 7, there's a lot of hype around Wi-Fi 7 and what it can provide to us. And that's because it will support 2.4, 5, and 6 gigahertz, be able to give us some enhancements over just having 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi 6 and then leaving Wi-Fi 6E and leaving the rest of the bands kind of like there. And so what's interesting is Meter. If you guys have heard of Meter, it's a network as a service company. Meter is not actually giving into that kind of hype. And they're really educating their customers and saying, do you need Wi-Fi 7 today? You know, you've got a handful of mobile devices that support Wi-Fi 7. Do you need it? And so I thought it was interesting that they made a post describing how it's not critical to move to Wi-Fi 7 today, but you know, when you're ready to move towards Wi-Fi 7 and you have the reasons to upgrade to it, then Meter will actually go and upgrade your hardware to Wi-Fi 7 access points, right? And so the nice thing about Meter and network as a service is that there's really not a lot of upfront hardware costs because it's a service that's being offered to you, and it moves things more towards an operational model. And for this kind of equipment and service that's being offered to people, it's really interesting to see how some have moved towards this and how it would help. And that's because you constantly get updates from a company like Meter to their products. And Meter does the whole stack. So you're talking about firewall, switches, access points. And I believe they'll have a Wi-Fi 7 AP soon. I'm actually going to be testing Meter equipment. Yesterday, I went and picked up a box. I haven't opened it yet. It's just sitting right here on my floor. But it'll be interesting to see about how to set up the network stack, how it works. And if you looked or have seen a previous Clear to Send podcast episode, we did have them on as a sponsor. And one of the coolest things was seeing Meter Command and how that is an enhanced version of AI that I'm used to with interacting on the network and being able to create dashboards on the fly. And so I thought that was really neat of Meter. But kind of a different approach from a company saying you don't need it. You don't need this hardware yet, so don't get it. Right. And I don't know, have you guys heard about Meter before or any other network as a service? Okay. So you guys have been using Meter for a long time, Anders. That's awesome. Meters. You've been using meters for a long time. I get the joke. took me a second. And that's funny because as I'm talking about Meter, Anders is saying in Europe they've been using meters for a long time because you get it, in the US we're not using meters. We're not on the metric system. So a couple of other updates in the industry is we've got Meraki updating their switches, finally, that dashboard, and they're adding something called digital optical monitoring or DOM support. And if you work with switches, you know what this is when you're looking at or troubleshooting your SFP modules. And this update will come to the Meraki switch line on the latest MS17 release candidate. I'm curious if the Catalyst will get this in the dashboard. You know, you can add your Catalyst switches onto the Meraki dashboard, but it doesn't seem like there's any love for Catalyst there. Maybe this is because it's a release candidate. It's just for the Meraki switch line for now. But you'll be able to monitor your optics, be able to see transmit power, receive power, the temperature reading, and it's a long time coming, I think, because this should have been in the dashboard a long time ago. And if you work with Cisco switches, you're used to seeing this kind of information from the command line interface. Actually, any switch, enterprise switch with a command line interface, you've probably seen this coming, or you've seen this feature. And in higher ed, we do, the higher ed that I'm at, we use third-party SFPs, and a lot of times those SFPs are not very good. So we've had our fair share of bad SFPs. So when we run this digital optical monitoring, when we look at the SFP, you could see whether you're getting enough power, transmitting enough power, and be able to troubleshoot even remotely, right? It's really helpful remotely to be able to troubleshoot your SFP and optical interfaces. But again, MS17 release candidate, so proceed at your own risk when upgrading your Meraki switches. I tend to be on the more conservative side on Meraki releases because of some of the bugs I've seen in the past, but maybe it's gotten a lot better. I just haven't been as in tune. I have a couple Meraki environments, and we tend to just hold off until we really need to, unless there's a bug that we need to resolve in a future release, or if there has been some feature that we need, like this one. This would be really useful. So that's Meraki. Now, a couple of interesting news bits that I've seen that just have to do with what's happening in the world. And we all know that Elon Musk has really given us some cool technology, despite how vocal he is in some cases regarding non-technical stuff. But there is Starlink, which I ran into this article on Twitter, where a warship, okay, we're talking about a military warship where stealth is important. This specific ship looked like it was built for stealth. And the people here on this vessel just couldn't live without internet. And of course, you know, there is some secrecy that needs to be had when you're on a military ship. And so this Navy warship, somebody ended up installing a hidden Starlink on the ship itself and actually attached it to the hull of the ship. And then they were able to get on the internet, you know, go on social media, communicate with people online, which it's a pretty big security risk to do if you're trying to remain hidden about your location and all that. So it kind of reminds me of shadow IT at a company where people go behind your back and install maybe a rogue AP because they needed some sort of Wi-Fi connection in their cube. And it took them a while to figure this out. I think some of the the captain of the ship, one of the upper management guys there in the military of that vessel, they got wind of this Wi-Fi connection in the ship. And so when they actually interviewed the person who installed it, he lied, didn't give in to it, but eventually they figured out what was going on. So I thought that was pretty funny that given Starlink with the satellites in the air, and if you haven't used Starlink, it actually works pretty well. I used it on an airplane, and it was really fast, really low latency, faster than any of the other Wi-Fi networks that I've used for, for any Wi-Fi on a moving vehicle, moving airplane. But yeah, it's not stealthy with the Starlink antenna, because yes, it is transmitting all the time. The signal can be heard, seen. You've got a big spectrum analyzer in the ocean, you can probably find it. But that's Starlink. And if we continue on with military and warfare, I don't know if you guys came across this post on Twitter where in the Russian-Ukraine war that's happening, there are drones being used, weaponized drones being used in this war. And the other side, if you understand RF and how drones work, they understand that the communications of the drone and how it's controlled is going to be using 2.4 or 5 gigahertz. And so they've built a box with antennas to jam those signals, just so those drones aren't operable. So we're weaponizing RF here to take down drones, but it really does show that you need a certain level of understanding in RF and building antennas and hardware, because that's a photo that was taken of a soldier that was surrendering, but he had the box open, and I guess a shot was taken from the drone. And they dove in deep with how this thing was constructed. It's just put into like a Pelican case. Nothing fancy, just something quick to put together, get that out to a soldier. But you can see how the antennas are placed, different antennas with power switches. Looks like a nuclear box or something, right, with those switches. But to be transmitting, jamming a signal at such a high transmit power, I don't know, like having to put that on your lap, I'm not sure about that, because this guy's going to be transmitting his crotch, and he won't be having any children in the future. But you can see how it was put together, very cheap, kind of dangerous actually. And I don't think these units live long in the field, but I don't think that's the purpose, right? It's something to be put together quickly and then jam a signal. Of course, in the US, jamming signals is illegal, but in wartime, that would be, this is how they're using it to try to take down technology, as technology is now more advanced, and even some of the more inexpensive technology being used in warfare. So that's kind of interesting with that, and hopefully we don't get to see that. Hopefully you don't get to see that. It's kind of a bad situation that's happening there, but interesting how they're using the technology. And again, like a really good understanding of RF, of what's happening with and how you would implement it. And I just think it's interesting how would that conversation come up on the war table, right? It's like, hey, we're being attacked by these drones, or these drones are identifying all of our locations and flying really close to our soldiers. How do we combat these drones without having to use missiles, a missile to take down a small aircraft? So then we get into kind of my gripe for this week, where I've been looking at a lot of release notes lately, and I find that there's a lack of detail in these release notes. And I'll use this one as an example. So I'm going to pick on Eero, because I use Eero at home for my Wi-Fi network for the family. And when I was looking at, a notification that I got on my phone saying there's an update for my APs, do you want to update them? I wanted to see what the release notes contained. What kind of update am I getting? And so this update that was released on September 3rd doesn't provide much other than it's saying there's performance and stability improvements, and the file size is huge. And so my question is, what kind of performance and stability improvements am I getting out of this update? And it would be nice if they went into detail of what that meant. And as a network operator, I want to know what could this possibly fix in my environment, right? If my kids are having issues with their iPads because they can't get to the website to do their homework, maybe it's the AP itself. I would like to know if you're improving performance or the stability of how you're handling the protocol. I think that would be nice to know. And so occasionally Eero has been putting out release updates, and that's what it'll say: performance and stability improvements. And I've been seeing that at other companies as well, other enterprise companies, where the release notes tend to be pretty empty. They'll just say enhancements, nothing else interesting. And so that kind of frustrates me because it's so vague. And I don't know if I can trust a company that puts out pretty vague release notes, because what are we updating to, and are there any caveats to that? And so I wanted to show an example of release notes I like. So here I use Palo Alto Networks quite a bit, and I look at their release notes all the time, especially for any future updates that have came out. And that's because I want to know what are the known issues of this release and the addressed issues. And whenever I see someone posting known issues, that means there's been some considerable amount of testing to that version of the release notes, right? And so to me, that's ideal. That's what I like to see. Knowing that from a firewall or a panorama command line interface, you can, override existing application, override, like very detailed stuff, workarounds for specific known issues. And then when it comes, and that way, if you're going to update and any of these known issues could impact your environment, not to go to that version, right? But when it just says performance enhancements, bug fixes, it's kind of hard to know what you're getting into when you push that update. And even in the addressed issues, it's pretty detailed with what exactly they are fixing. There are some updates where there's not an address issue. Maybe it's just a feature update. But here they fix an issue where decryption-based traffic failed on explicit proxy nodes. Like, that's a good fix if you are using explicit proxy nodes, right? Or websites with no decrypt policy rule were decrypted, even though you said don't decrypt it. Like, those are good release notes. And I think that's really where I know that some companies are testing their software, and it really kind of points back to remember the CrowdStrike issue, and the whole optics of that is it made it look like Windows was the problem, but CrowdStrike pushed an update to their agent and it caused the problem, right? And so I think we need to be careful when we use these auto updates in knowing when those auto updates get pushed out as well, just so you can be ready and have a team available to move if something happens. But another aspect of that is testing those updates and making sure that you're not running into these problems in production. But I know that can be challenging, right? There's a lot of IT teams that are spread thin. They're probably not testing a lot of updates. And right now we're putting a lot of trust in our vendors. And I think the vendors can do their part by doing their testing as much as possible. They have the resources, they have the funds, we're buying into their products. They should be doing this level of testing. And I don't know, do you guys run into the same issue as me when it comes to release notes, or do you just bypass it and go, yeah, you know what? It is what it is. Is that the case? All right. So what have I been working on this week? I wanted to kind of share some of the things that I run into. So this week, been doing a lot of coordinating with various teams on improving some operational efficiencies. So that could be as simple as an AP goes down. What do we do when an AP goes down? Has it recovered? How long do we wait until we put an action item on it? How do we get notified of an AP going down? And so part of that is understanding where do these alerts go, knowing about alert fatigue, because if you're doing email alerts, you tend to just see all those emails, but you're not reading the alerts. At least I know I'm not, because email is just not the best place for any type of alert. So in our organization, we use Slack. So what I wanted to do was send specific alerts to a Slack channel. Not all alerts, very specific alerts, the alerts that we care about, and then be able to act on it pretty quickly, right? So in a large environment, if an access point went down, I'd like to know where did it go down, what switch is it connected to, which switch port, and then we could have the network team look at it first, or have some other group look at it first, and then if it's a physical issue, we activate the right team and they take a look at it. And part of that too is setting up the right monitoring in place, right? So you can't work on operational efficiencies until you've got something in place that you need to work on. And so in the environments and clients that I work with, we use network monitoring quite a bit, because we need to know if there's an issue, where is the issue? And I want to be able to get to the scope of that issue pretty quickly. And so I like to use Zabbix as monitoring. Then there's a lot of different things I like to monitor from the network, right? Because if I can't access, the firewall, or maybe like there's a specific interface that's not reachable, or there's a specific device that's down, I'd like to know if it's an internet problem, and going into understanding how to even get into the network if maybe the WAN is down. And so I've been looking at upgrading Zabbix to a newer version and using some of the newer features that are available, especially checking certificates, SSL certificates, because that should be an easy thing to monitor. And for some reason, for some of us, it's not that easy. But Zabbix, the newer version that I'm on now, or migrating to, allows me to just check a certificate, alert X number of days before it expires, that kind of thing, right? And send the right alerts. And so even then, setting up the alerts is key for me, because I don't want to be alerted in the middle of the night for every little thing. So we set up escalations where if some devices that are deemed critical, we should alert right away. If it's not acknowledged, then do a page after hours, right, on that critical system. And now that we have kind of those things in place and operations going on, I take a step back, and with the consulting that I do, I really have to do and create systems. And the systems, it's a slow process for me to try to put that together, because it takes a lot of sitting down and putting things together of like, here's how we do networking, here's how we do Wi-Fi, here's where we'll go to troubleshoot something that is repeatable elsewhere or to somebody else. So if I were to bring in someone new, they can look at these systems we have in place and be able to pick it up pretty quickly. And a lot of that has to do with working in multi-vendor networks. And for me, that's a common thing nowadays, is not having to work on a full stack. There are pros and cons with doing a full single vendor network stack or working on a network stack where there's multiple vendors. So I could have like Palo Alto firewalls, but maybe with Meraki switches and a different AP vendor. So I've been in those types of scenarios, and so I've been thinking about that this week. Because for me, I like to build networks where the hardware that fits the requirement. And so if there's one vendor that has everything, like Meraki, for example, I don't typically like their MX line because I don't find that to be a real firewall. I cannot see what kind of traffic is being blocked, what kind of traffic is coming in and out of the network from a Meraki MX. So I'll go and put in a firewall that gives me that level of transparency, that level of insight. But if that requirement is not there to have that level of detail, then the MX would work. It's not required to get another, Palo Alto Networks firewall, because I am working on that this week too, is configuring Palo Alto Networks firewalls. I was looking at ZTP because it would be nice to just plug in that firewall, have it connect to Panorama, and boom, it's configured right. But there are some limitations that I found with ZTP. So now I have to go in at least manually get it online, get it connected to Panorama, push whatever changes I want. So I started learning and understanding how the templates work in Panorama, how I could leverage that and variables in order to push similar configurations to different sets of firewalls. And then started looking into industrial switches as well for very specific scenarios. And I think we get used to looking at or using cloud-based equipment, or maybe you're used to using Cisco's command line interface. And so when you introduce another vendor with different ways of managing that equipment, like the CLI is different, CLI statements are all different. That's where working with these multi-vendor network equipment, you have to learn quickly, get used to it, ensure that there's this interoperability between these multi-vendors. And so, yeah, it adds a level of complexity. But again, it's really working towards, the right equipment for the requirement. And so these industrial switches are nothing like crazy where I'm putting it in, I don't know, a mine or something. It's just going into an enclosure that's going to sit outdoors. And so I couldn't, in this case, I can't get like a Juniper switch that would fit into that enclosure. They don't. Does Juniper make industrial switches? I have no idea. I know Cisco does, but also looking at the cost, right? So I didn't mention cost with any of that. And so requirements will have to go fit with the cost as well. That's what I've been working on this week, and actually pretty drained from having to be in meetings and going round and round in conversations. And I'm just glad it's Saturday, and I'm here talking with you guys, just getting to vent a little bit. And so what I've learned from this week after doing all that work with meetings, in regards to meetings, and I don't know how I've forgotten this, but we need to put agendas in the meetings. So in a meeting invite, you get a meeting invite. If there's no agenda, it should be an automatic decline. And lately I have been okay with just leaving meetings, declining meetings, because there's no agenda. And I don't like sitting there, having this free-flowing conversation that has no purpose. And I think if we're going to have a meeting, there should be a purpose for the meeting, and it should not be answerable in an email. So if it takes an email to provide a response, send the email. Don't have a meeting about it. But I do know, I know that there are a lot of people who like to have meetings. That's just their way of interacting with people. And so when we have these meetings, they're mostly virtual now. It also made me learn that we should be able to work from anywhere. That should be the norm. But I do know a lot of people are being put back into the office, but I just find it much more refreshing to be working somewhere else. Change up your workspace every once in a while. So here I work a lot here in this space where I'm recording right now. And sometimes I have to go and change my workspace. I could either go outside, sit at Starbucks, whatever, right? I find that working outside with the sunlight actually triggers me to think differently, and maybe I'll get more work done that way. I found that to be very useful. And so I think, working from anywhere, now that we've got all these cloud-based applications, we've got VPN everywhere, it should be very easy to work anywhere as long as you've got internet. The other thing I learned this week was refreshing myself on Radius and AAA. Now I don't have to troubleshoot, Radius that often, but just came across an issue where I could not tell if this was a Radius issue or authentication issue or a Wi-Fi issue, and having certain level of detail with logging and insight is great. But in this case, I was seeing like Mac authentication, a very specific issue where Mac auth failed, but then quickly worked. And so I didn't know if that was impacting the client because we had some people having issues, and I didn't know if it had something to do with OWE. And so I had to go back and really learn what is the expected sequence of packets for authentication using Radius and AAA. And so I went and created a diagram showing a client making its Wi-Fi 802.11 authentication and association, then the AP communicating with an authentication server, the AP acting as the authenticator of that client, and the AP sending Radius packets to the authentication server. What does it send? Access requests. Radius server responds within access accept or deny, reject, whatever that is. And being able to capture that as well, right? So it's one thing to know that the AP will send it or your controller will send it, but did the authentication server receive it on its end, and is it responding? And so knowing where in the network and the path to verify that, because I've run into a number of situations where someone's like, yeah, it's sending it, but how do I know for sure? Like we have an issue right now, so how do I know for sure that it's working? And so that's where I use packet captures, because the packets never lie. And in this case, I can capture, at least from the AP port, that I know it's sending out an access request, and I see that the Radius server is responding. But then I see in the logs that the AP had a Mac auth failure. So I opened up a ticket with the vendor saying, hey, why does this log message say Mac auth failed when the AP received the access accept from the Radius server? And so that's kind of where I'm at with troubleshooting and understanding. And it made me realize I need to have a better understanding of vendor products. And I think I just put too much trust and reliance on these vendors, where I just trust that they know what they're doing, that it works, but we've seen our fair share of bugs. And I ran into that the other day as well, where traffic from a specific network was not working for this application, but they blamed it on Wi-Fi because that's where some of the issues were coming from. And as simple as doing a ping, right? And a lot of people just block ping, or they have some sort of DDoS protection going on, so it probably won't respond to ping. But if we could enable ping on some of these applications to at least know, hey, I got to the destination, that would solve a lot of, it would help troubleshoot faster, right? And so we had to go into this scenario where ping wasn't enabled, and so the server wasn't responding to the ping. But hey, I got traceroute. Let me see if where I might be having a problem. But again, understanding that some of these routers have DDoS protection in place, or they don't allow response to protocols that don't matter for its operation. And so when we look at it, it's just the troubleshooting in general. As a Wi-Fi person, you end up diving into switching and then routing, looking at the WAN, looking at trying to piece everything together, working with other teams who might not be as willing to work with you. It gets frustrating, right? And so I learned, one, have patience working with people, ask very specific questions, define what the problem is, because when I got pulled in, no one had defined what the problem is. And as I asked questions, I found that, okay, it's not just the Wi-Fi network, it's actually other networks as well. And then we ended up finding out that there was an asymmetric route, and it's a lot of good communication that needs to be done. So soft skills is a big piece, I think, for me this week in working with other people. So that's what I encourage you guys to do as well. And so that's going to be the end of the live stream coming up on the top of the hour. So I want to thank you guys for joining me here for me Saturday morning. And I've been, the reason why I picked Saturday morning is during the week, it can get pretty busy with work. And I don't think work would appreciate me doing a live stream during work hours. And also early is good for me just because I wake up to take care of the puppy. And by the time I get the puppy taken care of, like right now, she's on her back sleeping. So she's taking a nap and she's not, biting at me trying to have her take her out. So I take care of all of that. Then I have about an hour to kind of reflect or do this live stream. But I get that Saturday mornings or Saturday in general is not really good for some people. But we'll test out different days and times, and I hope to keep doing this to interact, especially with you, Anders. Thank you for joining in, but hopefully to interact with more people. So I want to thank you guys for coming, and I think hopefully if you enjoyed any of this, right, give me a subscribe if you want to get notified for when the next live stream comes out, or like the video if you thought it was useful. And I appreciate any comments and feedback and any topics you want to talk about. But I thought it was a good time. So thank you again. And I think I will get back to my coffee. So thank you guys. Appreciate it. I'll see you on the next one.